Imagine being a child, barely old enough to understand the world, when suddenly you're accused of a crime you didn't commit. Your life, your future destroyed in an instant. Today we uncover the heartbreaking stories of 5 innocent kids who were wrongfully accused and the devastating impact it had on their lives. These are tales of injustice, shattered dreams, and the fight for redemption. From coerced confessions to racial bias, these cases expose the flaws in our justice system and the human cost of wrongful accusations. Stay with us as we dive deep into these stories, exploring the crimes, the trials, and the long road to exoneration. Case 1, the Central Park 5, 1989. Our first story takes us to New York City in 1989, a time when the city was gripped by fear and racial tension. On April 19th, a female jogger was brutally attacked and raped in Central Park. The crime shocked the city, and the police were under immense pressure to find the perpetrators. 5 teenagers, Antron McCray, Kevin Richardson, Yusuf Salam, Raymond Santana, and Corey Wise, were arrested and accused of the crime. These boys, aged 14 to 16, were interrogated for hours without legal representation or parental supervision. Under intense pressure, they confessed to a crime they didn't commit. The confessions were coerced, with the boys being fed details of the crime by investigators. Despite no physical evidence linking them to the crime, the media frenzy painted them as wilding criminals. The prosecution relied heavily on their confessions, and all 5 were convicted. Antron McCray, Kevin Richardson, Yusuf Salam, and Raymond Santana were sentenced to 5 to 10 years in juvenile detention, while Corey Wise, who was 16, was tried as an adult and sentenced to 5 to 15 years in prison. In 2002, DNA evidence and a confession from the real perpetrator, Matias Reyes, exonerated them. Reyes, a convicted serial rapist and murderer, admitted to acting alone. The Central Park 5 had spent between 6 to 13 years in prison for a crime they didn't commit. Yusuf Salam later said, "They didn't see us as human beings, they saw us as animals." Their case became a symbol of racial injustice and the dangers of coerced confessions. In 2014, they received a $41 million settlement from New York City, but no amount of money could give them back the years they lost. Case 2, the San Antonio 4, 1994. Next, we travel to San Antonio, Texas, where 4 women, Elizabeth Ramirez, Cassandra Rivera, Christy Mayhew, and Ana Vasquez, were accused of sexually assaulting 2 young girls, ages 7 and 9. The girls, Elizabeth's nieces, later recanted their testimony, claiming they were coerced by their father. The case began in 1994, when Elizabeth Ramirez was accused of assaulting her nieces during a visit. The girls claimed that Elizabeth and her friends had abused them, but there was no physical evidence to support these allegations. The prosecution relied on homophobic stereotypes, as the women were lesbians. Elizabeth Ramirez was sentenced to 37.5 years in prison, while Cassandra Rivera, Christy Mayhew, and Ana Vasquez received 15-year sentences. The women maintained their innocence, but their appeals were repeatedly denied. In 2012, new evidence emerged, including recanted testimony from the accusers and expert testimony debunking the prosecution's claims. In 2016, the women were exonerated and released from prison. Ana Vasquez said, "We lost everything, our families, our freedom, our lives, but we never lost hope." Their case highlighted the impact of homophobia and flawed forensic testimony and wrongful convictions. It also exposed the dangers of relying on child testimony without proper scrutiny. Case 3, the West Memphis 3, 1993. In West Memphis, Arkansas, 3 teenagers, Damian Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly Jr., were accused of the brutal murders of 3 young boys, Stevie Branch, Christopher Byers, and Michael Moore. The case was fueled by satanic panic and coerced confessions. Jesse Miskelly, who had a low IQ, confessed after hours of interrogation without a lawyer. His confession was inconsistent and filled with errors, but it was enough to convict all 3. Damian Eccles was sentenced to death, while Jason Baldwin and Jesse Miskelly received life sentences. The prosecution's case relied heavily on Miskelly's confession and dubious forensic evidence, including claims of satanic rituals. Over the years, supporters and advocates fought tirelessly for their release. In 2011, new DNA evidence exonerated them, and they were released under an offered plea, which allowed them to maintain their innocence while acknowledging the prosecution had enough evidence to convict. Damien Eccles said, "We were just kids. They took our lives away for something we didn't do." Their case became a rallying cry for criminal justice reform and exposed the dangers of satanic panic and coerced confessions. Case 4, the Norfolk Four, 1997. In Norfolk, Virginia, 4 men, Derek Tice, Daniel Williams, Joseph Dick Jr., and Eric Wilson, were accused of raping and murdering Michelle Moore Bosco. 2 of the accused were teenagers at the time. They were coerced into confessing after intense interrogations. The case began in 1997, when Michelle was found dead in her apartment. The police focused on Daniel Williams, who was dating Michelle, and pressured him into confessing. His confession implicated the others, who were also coerced into confessing. Despite DNA evidence pointing to another man, Omar Ballard, who confessed to acting alone, the 4 were convicted and sentenced to prison. After years of legal battles, they were pardoned in 2009. Derek Tice said, "We were just kids. They broke us down until we said what they wanted to hear." Their case highlighted the dangers of false confessions and prosecutorial misconduct. Case 5, George Stinney Jr., 1944. Our final story takes us to Alcaloo, South Carolina, in 1944, where 14-year-old George Stinney Jr. was accused of murdering 2 young white girls, Betty June Binnicker and Mary Emma Thames. George, an African-American boy, was arrested and convicted within hours, with no physical evidence or proper legal representation. The trial lasted less than a day, and an all-white jury sentenced him to death by electrocution. He became the youngest person executed in the U.S. in the 20th century. In 2014, a judge vacated his conviction, citing a lack of due process and evidence. George's sister, Amy Ruffner, said, "They took my brother's life for nothing. He was just a child." His case remains a stark reminder of racial injustice in the legal system. These 5 innocent kids were robbed of their childhoods, their futures, and their freedom. Their stories are a stark reminder of the flaws in our justice system and the devastating impact of wrongful accusations. But they are also stories of hope, resilience, and the fight for justice. What do you think can be done to ensure no child suffers the same fate? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this video enlightening, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with others. Together, we can shed light on these injustices and fight for a better future.